All right, welcome everyone to the very first K-12 / P-12 Australian Asia Pacific, I should say, Asia Pacific user group for Canvas for 2022. And we've got some great things to talk about today. I may as well just dive straight in. This is the agenda for today. First cab off the rank is our friend Andy, who's going to be talking a little bit about how at Barker they measure student effort using learning mastery in Canvas. We also have Ruth Thornton, who's our APAC Product Manager, sharing a few updates from a product perspective. But we also thought it'd be a good idea to talk about managing student absence. Maybe we should include teacher absence as well, given the conversation before we started recording. How we go about managing that in our schools, and ideas that we might want to share with each other about how we're currently managing that. Because with or without COVID, it is something that we need to consider. And Canvas gives us the opportunity to make sure that we do include, we have equity in learning for people who can't be at school for various reasons. And then just general Q&A amongst each other, and discussion and sharing, and any questions that anyone wants to propose to the group and have a chat about. And last of all, Canvas merch. If you read the email, which looks like most of you did, that was sent out to register for this. For those who've completed that really short survey and have attended here today, we will be randomly, after the meeting, once we've got the full attendance, we'll be randomly picking 2 names from people who've both submitted the survey and attended today, to send some Canvas merch out to. So feel free to invite anyone along who's last minute, who's not on yet, so that they can go in the running. And what we'll do, just to give people a little bit more time, we'll allow you to fill in that survey over the next 24 hours or so, if you haven't done so already. Just give some more people the opportunity to have a chance at getting some Canvas merch. But as I said, we'll start off with our mate Andy. I'll stop sharing my screen, and feel free to share your screen. I think you've got a couple of things that you want to show us, and
Yep.
Take it away.
Great. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I've not set up Zoom on this yet, and I need to just allow access to Zoom in my system preferences, and I need to quit Zoom to make that work. So do you want to pad for me for a second, and I'll join you in a second? Be back soon.
All right, see you in a sec. Fun times. While Sandy's rejoining and having to restart, is there anything that anyone just wants to flag or bring up, just as a general question for the group that they want to chat about, so that we can kind of queue it up for later after we've had the other items that we've gone through on the agenda?
Yeah. Is anyone looking at digital credentials at the moment, or have they rolled them out at their school with Badger or Credly or anything else? I'd love to hear from you guys. It's something we're looking at as one of our major projects this year, and something I'd love to hear from more people about. We're struggling to find examples in Australia that have done it well, or in New South Wales anyway. Lots down in Victoria.
Jeff has said that on the chat that he's using Badger for staff, so maybe you could reach out to Jeff.
Okay.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, David, Hunter School are also kind of talking just in terms of using Credly and integrating it with outcomes, which it hasn't been done before, but they're working with them to kind of get that working. So it could be worth kind of speaking to them as well, because I think that's a really interesting kind of concept.
HSPA, you mean, Hunter School of Performing Arts?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. They're using. That's right. I don't know if they're using Credly though. but they're
Okay.
getting stuck into it. That's for sure. I don't think anyone's from there is here. We have a parent from HSPA, Stacey, but
Do you want me to go ask the head teacher, Taz, in a minute? He's in
mean
the
your
other room.
husband.
Yeah, he's in the other room. Hang
Well,
on.
ask your husband to join.
Yeah, that's convenient.
Well, actually, she can't because she's got COVID and he doesn't.
And it's parent teacher night, so they're all. Oh, here he is. Hang on, Dad. Oh, hang on, I'll mute. Wait there. We're going to have a family argument.
All right. Well,
You wanted it raw. You got it raw.
yeah, no, perfect. This is one of the disadvantages of having it in person. You miss out on fantastic stuff like this. Okay, so Andy, we have you back, and you're sharing screen. So why don't we get back to you?
Awesome.
We'll
Sorry about
circle
that.
back. No,
Yeah,
all
look,
good.
I just re-imaged my laptop, and it's one of the joys things you forget to set up. Okay, so look, hello, my name's Andy Mifsud. I'm the Director of Digital Learning at Barking College. We're a large independent school in Hornsby in Sydney. My role covers K-12. I'm mostly involved in the secondary school, but sort of very happy to work across campuses, and we've got a digital learning team across the schools that look after projects like this. So this sort of falls under the category for us of progressive reporting. We're about 4 years into progressive reporting from, I suppose, the time that we developed the strategy. We've been running progressive reporting, continuous assessment, that sort of thing for 2 years now. And how we collect effort grades, which we call approaches to learning, is part of that strategy as well. So just a quick look at an overview of what we collect and how we do it. So at the start of each term, we basically, well, actually, this was before we even start the term, but right at the start when we established this system, we created a rubric and a set of outcomes at a top level account. So for us, in our sub-account structure in Canvas, we have a secondary school and our junior school. So the effort grade language changes a little bit between the schools to make it more suited to the specific age levels of the students. So we've created the outcomes and the rubric at those top levels, so that anytime we use the outcomes and those rubrics, it's always pointing back to that one main source of information. So for example, if we need to change any of the wording or the language, we just need to change it at that top level, and then that sort of gets filtered down to each of the courses that use those outcomes. It also means that we've got one central place that we can look for data. So if we run a report, or if we're targeting one specific sub-account level, it means that we can get all the outcome information from that account level, and that will be across different departments and year groups and things like that. So that's sort of our first step, and I'll show you some demonstrations of all of these in a second. Then the way we actually run this is by creating a quiz, and we're using the old Canvas quiz because we run it as a survey. And I don't know if some of our Canvas friends can tell us if the new quizzes will support surveys and sort of non-graded quizzes that way. We could use that as well, but at the moment we're still using the old quiz engine, and we create a quiz called Approaches to Learning. In the junior school, we call these Learner Agency. In the secondary school, we call it Approaches to Learning, but they're essentially both just talking about our effort grades, the way that we measure how students are approaching their work, if they're putting the required effort in. And then what we do is we add that quiz to each course, and we run this all the way from year 3 to 12. We do have prep students doing something similar, but they're actually doing this in Seesaw and not in Canvas, just because that's sort of the system that they're using. So, but basically from all students from year 3 to 12 are running this process right now. So by having this set up as a survey means that we can actually ask the students to reflect on the same criteria first. This is our way of getting around students sort of using a rubric for their own evaluation, for self-evaluation. Instead, we just pull apart each of the elements into a survey, and we ask students to just reflect on where they think they sit according to our criteria, which I'll show you again when I demonstrate. By doing this in the survey means that we've got, we use Speedgrader. We can see the student response on the left, and then the teachers can use a rubric that again points back to that top level on the account to give their own evaluation of how they think the student is going. And then our final step is just looking at how we visualize that data. So going into to show you what this looks like, there's nothing really too fancy about it. But this is what a kind of a completed survey looks like. So we have our 5 areas you can just see here. So we ask students to reflect on, do they feel that they come to class ready to learn? Do they actively engage in their learning? Do they complete learning tasks? Do they work to communicate and collaborate within the class? And do they challenge themselves to improve? So in this screenshot here, you can just see what it looks like from the student perspective. We do highlight, if you look at the way we judge that criteria, we say that meeting expectations is where we hope every student to fall into. We just use the rhetoric that we set high expectations, and we expect all students to kind of live up to those high expectations. But of course, you know, as teachers, we know that there's always students that go above and beyond. So we do want to make sure that we capture that category in exceeding expectations. The working towards expectations, then on the other side, is really just acknowledging that there are students that might not be quite at that level yet. It's not that they're being sort of purposely negative or trying to misbehave or anything. It's just that there's an area of weakness. And then we finally have not meeting expectations, and that's really for the students that are falling below, and some sort of learning intervention needs to happen for those students that are falling into that category here. So our process basically goes, students run through this list and they just mark where they think they sit. So this student here, for example, thought that they were exceeding expectations. We do have each of these categories is fleshed out in this rubric. Obviously here, once it's marked, you can only see what all of the criteria says for that one, but the students know these kinds of categories, and it's the same in all of their subjects in all of the year groups. Again, I said that we've set this up at the top level. So here you can see it's using this rubric, which does sit on our secondary school account level, and each of the criteria down here are just listed as, you can see that they are outcomes because they've got the little outcome icon. It's super important that these are set up as outcomes, not just as rubrics, because if you're trying to extract data out of these, it needs to be set up as a learning outcome. It enables a whole lot of extra details, but also being able to take the data out and doing other interesting things with it. One of which is that you can see all of that data listed for you in the Mastery Gradebook. So if you've not used any of the Mastery outcomes or anything before, you might not be familiar with this screen, but if you have, then you'll know that in the Gradebook, you can click a little drop down and it takes you from the normal spreadsheet type looking view to this learning mastery view. So at the moment, these are the 5 categories here, and this is all of our students in our English class. You can see just at a glance, all of those students, most of them are meeting the expectations. There's a couple of yellow patches here in working towards, and there's a couple of darker greens for exceeding. You can filter by sort of toggling these colors on or off. You can also hover over each of these categories, and it'll give you a pie graph of where students are sitting as well. So for someone that's coordinating a subject to see, or even just for a class teacher to see all of these marks in a snapshot, it's a really nice way of viewing it this way. because they are set up as learning mastery outcomes as well, then you can decide what sort of average is used to work out what this final score is. So by default, Canvas will give you what's called the decaying average. So that basically this final score that's worked out here, or it's not final score, it's the most current score, is this at the moment. This is just showing you the most recent one. But as the terms go through, and we do one of these every term, we do them a bit more frequently in the junior school. We do them 3 times a semester, whereas we only do it twice a semester in the secondary school. But it can work out a bit of a calculation to display the information that's most relevant to you. So you can set it so that it always shows you the most recent time that this has been assessed. It could also be what's called the decaying average, which is what we use. So it's set that 65% of the number that sits in the background that actually calculates the color here comes from the most recent time that this has been assessed, this outcome has been assessed, and then the remaining 35% is an average of all the other times. So we like that method because it still puts the weight on the most recent assessment, but it also pays some sort of acknowledgement to all of the other times that student has been assessed in the past as well. So for a student that might have been progressively sort of really struggling at the start of the year, and only just kind of making a big effort at the end, it's still going to show that data without just sort of ignoring where that student comes from. So, but again, that's really up to you when you're setting up these outcomes at the start.
And one thing I'll point out is you can adjust that percentage as well. So if you want even greater weighting for the most recent, then you can adjust that up or down as you desire. It doesn't have to be 65-35.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, you can make it 50-50, or you can make it, 95 and 5%, something like that, to work out what that balance is. So that was a discussion we had with our curriculum leaders and our heads of department about how this should be displayed.
Just before you go on, Andy, Ruth has her hand up.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I can't see anything.
No,
that's why I interjected.
Yes.
Thank you so much. No, just really quickly, I'll introduce myself obviously in a second when we go through the product stuff, but I very quickly wanted to share, because it's really pertinent to what you're talking about here, Andy, that one of the bits of feedback that we've had from institutions in APAC is the request to have a true average as a calculation method for outcomes. So not just having decaying average or most recent or number of times, but being able to have a true average. So if something is done 3 times, then their grade or their result for that is then demonstrated as a perfect average of those 3 attempts and the scores that they received. And pleased to say that this is something that's actually been worked on by one of our engineers this quarter, and we're hoping to release it to production before the middle of this year, so in the first half of 2022. So I think that will actually be a really great improvement for lots of different use cases of outcomes, but just wanted to share that because I think that's a good timing.
That is awesome news. We would definitely use that sort of a true average, particularly maybe not for sort of effort grades, but particularly when we're also using a similar system in the junior school, where we've got outcomes that are related to academic outcomes, and an average there would actually suit us really well. So thanks, Ruth. That's awesome to hear that is on the way. Are there any other questions if I just pause at this point before going on to the visualization?
Yeah, Dave Shilty.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we still have to export this data to put into certain academic reports for the sake of a 6-monthly PDF. Do you have that same experience, and are you able to actually export this data out easily and meaningfully? Yeah,
look, I'm not sure easily we can say yes, it has been easy, but we certainly do take our approaches to learning data and put it into our SIS. Because getting the data out of Canvas is actually the easy part. We're dealing with a SIS that probably not many other schools are using. And just getting the data back into that specific SIS has been a bit challenging, but one of our sort of IT engineers has got a process down. So it really just depends on, I guess, what kind of SIS you've got and how easy it is to import the data. But as far as getting the data from Canvas, it comes out really nicely, whether you're using API calls or whether you're running like a sort of just a manual report. It comes out with numbers and it's quite easy to find. So yeah.
So currently you use API, or do you just use a manual export?
No, we do an API.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Second follow-up question is, while I like the idea of the survey and the teacher rubric for periodic feedback, do you have any examples whereby these particular learning behaviours have actually been authentically integrated within individual assessments? So the language of learning continues as an ongoing feature of the design of the task and the learning experience?
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion when we were planning sort of what's our strategy for this, and it was one of the ideas was that we integrate all of these approaches to learning with our sort of what we call our checkpoints. They're basically the tasks on Canvas, which we use to paint the picture of our progressive reporting. But we sort of landed on that we did want to keep this separate, but of course that was a decision that we came up with as a school. I think that it could work out quite nicely where you do have an assessment task or any other kind of learning task, where you can attach all of these outcomes to an existing rubric. You can just, when you import them in, you just set them to be non-scoring, so they can just sit at the bottom of the rubric and use it that way. So we did experiment a little bit with that. We, in the end, just thought the data might be a little bit cleaner if we just have these sitting as these standalone tasks, because we do make sure that they're all complete, and it's a little bit more in our control if they're set up that separately. Whereas if they're sort of sitting in lots of tasks dotted around the place, they're a little bit harder to check whether they've been completed. But you could absolutely do it that way too.
Oh no, we have. I was just trying to see what your experience look like. Yeah, because it certainly does highlight where certain aspects of what we value in our learning are actually being attended to quite regularly, and other ones that perhaps are not so much. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but doing the non-points inclusion of the rubric, yeah, all those sorts of techniques we've been using as well. So thanks, Andy.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so just onto the way we visualize this data. Now, this is a bit of an older draft copy of what our dashboard looks like. So this is, but I just thought it gives you an idea of the development that's happening at the moment. So this is just a fairly basic report that we have generated using Power BI, which is a Microsoft product. Down the bottom here is where our approaches to learning data eventually flows into. So this dashboard here shows us the dials for each of those approaches to learning. This again was built by someone that we brought in to help us with business intelligence. So I can't really tell you too much about how this report is generated, only to say that once you do have the data in Canvas, it's not that difficult to pull it out and start to do interesting things with it. So this is for an individual student, and it gives you a snapshot of the average of each approaches to learning data points across all of their subjects. So we found this helpful to teachers, to parents primarily. What a parent wants to do is just be able to go in and see, all right, I just want sort of general information. How's my son or daughter going across all of their subjects? And they want to see that sort of on one page in a bit of an overall snapshot. We haven't found, we've tried some other tools in sort of LTIs that partner with Canvas to get this data, but we haven't really found anything that gives us exactly what we want. So that's why we have gone down this path of creating custom dashboards. Again, it doesn't look very fancy right now, and we hope to develop it over the years, but it's doing what we'd like it to do at this stage. Then, of course, this is just a screenshot, so I can't share this live, but you could click on the subjects. Oh, better not click in real life. You can click on the subjects, and those dials will just flick over to display what that the data for that specific subject. So that's the way that we've kind of got that going now. So, you know, if I was the parent of this student, I'd see that they're not really quite meeting the expectations across the board. And then if I wanted to drill down into the subjects, the specific subjects, I can do that by clicking on those links, and those dials will adjust. So you can kind of work out where the problem areas might be. So that's sort of in a nutshell what's taking where we're at the moment. I just thought I'd finish by putting a few little points and considerations. One of the first things that we haven't got working for us, but I know is possible, and something that, you know, when we have a bit more time, we really would like to develop, and that is the ability to just use an API call to push out these quizzes at the start of each term, or even potentially at the start of the year, and just have them sort of sitting in the courses from year after year. Depending on how you migrate courses year after year, you might be able to just set them up once, and then as the course sort of migration happens, they could copy over. I think we'd still like to explore the ability to just have an API call where we set it up so that we can just push out these quizzes every time we need them, and they're all set up as we'd like them. So that's one thing we haven't done yet, but we'd like to do in the future. The other thing that we are very close to have happening to kind of getting going right now is a tool that we can use to check whether these rubrics have been completed or not. We're using Curio, which is a company that designs LTIs and other tools that work with Canvas, and they've started to build for us a little button that we put into our course navigation menu that is our approaches to learning check. And when you hit that button, it just uses some data to work out whether a teacher has completed their approaches to learning or not. One of the biggest problems we have is teachers sometimes rush through this process, think they've clicked a box on a rubric and they don't actually click it, and hit save and move on, and don't realize that they've missed a bit of data. So we wanted to give the teachers a quick way to be able to just check for themselves. But also tied into that, we've asked to have an ability to also just send those teachers a reminder that they've missed some data. At the moment, we were checking this by running reports and doing it, but that was quite a manual process. So to be able to have a tool like that is important, particularly because, as I mentioned, we're a large school. We've got 16 classes in each year group from 7 to 12. So it's a lot of students to have to check, and very easy to miss something if you don't have some systems in place. The other one is looking at data across bespoke groups. So at the moment, I showed you that in that learning mastery view, that is housed within one course. But to be able to see something across, you know, a house group, or across a whole year level, or across a whole school, probably needs some more development on Power BI. Also, if you're looking into doing something similar and you want to take that information out to Power BI or move it into your SIS, yeah, you really do need to have someone with that kind of expertise to know how to move that data across. Certainly nothing that you know, the digital learning team would have been able to do. We needed someone with quite specific knowledge on you know, those API calls and things like that. And the other thing that we will eventually look at is picking out those students that are not meeting the expectations, and finding some way of alerting their pastoral carers that, here are the students that are falling below, so that they're kind of the heads of houses, the pastoral care team, actually have that information being delivered to them, rather than relying on going into the dashboard and having a look at those in a kind of more ad hoc manner. So that is it for what I wanted to share. If there's any other questions, I won't stop sharing my screen just in case I need to demonstrate anything, but are there any other questions? Oh, have I considered Tentacle Insights? Yes, we have. We have a demo going with Tentacle Insights, that is Octopus BI, but it still didn't give us that outcome data in the way we wanted to be sort of. It's possible that we just haven't explored it in enough detail. So we were hoping a trial was going to sort of help us sort it out. At the moment, it still wasn't quite what we were after. And we feel like our own development using Power BI is going to be more bespoke, and allow us the option to change things as we see fit. So that's kind of why we're going down that road. But yeah, certainly Tentacle Insights might be a really good solution.
What about Grade Guardian? Have you looked into that?
Yes, we did. Grade Guardian was great in the sense that you can create those custom dashboards. So we did create dashboards for heads of houses, so they can see their students in one look. But again, as a central place to be able to see, I mean, really what we wanted to see was this screen here. And we couldn't really find anything that was able to take that individual data and display it in this sort of way, where it's taking an average of all of those data points. I think it's quite unrealistic to think a product would just do that. So that's again the reason why we're thinking our own analytics are going to give us exactly what we want.
Yeah, Grade Guardian, I think, is the only product that I have seen that actually gives you that alert technology.
Yes.
Less dependent on the dashboard, but greater knowledge of the leaders who get alerts to certain dips in individual practice.
Yeah, look, our issue with those alerts is that we want an alert for something which is quite specific. We want to know in their effort grades if they're tracking below, sort of below a 2. And Grade Guardian really just gives those alerts based on a whole heap of other metrics, like whether students submitted work late or whether their grades are low, which is all really good as well. But for something as specific as effort grades, it sort of just gets bundled into everything else. So that's also the other consideration that we had. We do currently have Grade Guardian at the moment, though.
Andy,
Okay.
Warwick
Yes.
from Abbottsley.
Hello, Warwick.
With your student profile scenario, are you integrating sysinfo into that tab?
Yes.
And is the touch point in which the parents are engaging, is that through the Canvas app, or are you actually designing it through another mechanism?
It is through. I can show you that quickly. So at the moment, it's through. I'll show you a bit of detail. So this is through our portal, which we call My Barker, and it's just a tab that sits. So we've got a student dashboard here, but if you have a look through the profile, where it's got days absent, all of those kinds of things, they're all based on other SIS data. We also get data coming in from co-curricular as well. So. Yeah, the sort of the larger part of the dashboard is bringing in data from multiple sources, but yeah, it's this approach to learning data that's specifically coming from Canvas.
Thanks.
All right. Well, that might be everything. So thanks for the questions and allowing me to share where we're up to.
Thanks, Andy. I'll pass over to Ruth.
Alrighty, thanks, Paul. And terrific work, Andy. That was sensational. Thank you so much for sharing. It is awesome to be a part of the session today. So thank you so much for having me. Lots of friendly faces, so it's great to see you again. And for those of you who I haven't met before, it's wonderful to meet you. But my name is Ruth Thornton, and I am the Global Product Manager for our region here in Asia Pacific. So essentially, what does that mean? It means that my role is to advocate for the needs of education institutions here in our part of the world, which look quite different sometimes to other areas around the globe, but also quite different to each other. So sometimes the requirements that we might have from customers in Singapore might look quite different to New Zealand or other countries as well. So it's my job to make sure that when our product teams are developing new features and strategies for Canvas and our other suite of products, that we are taking into consideration a global approach and the requirements here from APAC. So what I wanted to do today is to share just a little bit of an update, I suppose, a bit of a touch base on product to make sure that people are in the loop, a very quick recap on some of the things that we've done over the last 12 to 18 months, and also what we're planning to focus on this year, and a couple of key things which were raised that might be most applicable to this group, that seem to be some common areas of interest. So I will jump in and share my screen, and we will go right ahead. I'm going to ask Paul or Rio, if you do see anything in the chat, please feel free to call it out, and we'll get started. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to do was share with you a little bit of a recap as I shared. So first of all, we've got our 3 key pillars at the top here. I wanted to break down some of the things that we've been doing over the last 12 to 18 months as guided by that product strategy that we've really had from the beginning. So first of all, we've always wanted Canvas to be more than just a place to share content and a place for creating assignments and doing assessment. So really tearing down barriers. And what does that mean? Well, for students, making sure that they've got that need for greater access and flexibility via online than what they could possibly do face-to-face, which we've definitely seen realized from COVID and the rest of the outcomes of the pandemic and what that has meant for education and students trying to continue their learning in a disrupted world. As well as for teachers who've possibly never taught with an LMS. And we also saw plenty of use cases of that in the last 2 or 3 years as well. So just a couple of examples that I wanted to call out here, particularly for our K-12, obviously, our Canvas for Elementaries. This has been a huge thing that we've been able to deliver essentially a revised view of Canvas designed specifically for the needs of those youngest learners, reflecting the classroom as they experience it, which is not as complicated with as many options as what our native Canvas has today. So being able to streamline those key elements of learning for communication and engagement and the things that matter most for them day to day, as well as how the content is structured. And the other one I wanted to call out is around the capability for teachers to upload any file as an annotation assignment and being able to, for students to be able to complete those within Canvas without needing to print and bring back to a file upload or scan or use any third-party tool. So bringing that part of the core LMS as well. The second pillar we can see there is around building up learners. And so this is really around making sure that we're giving our users the tools that they need to stay organized, to be on track, and to encourage effective learning habits. And so a couple of things that we're talking about there, just to call out a few, are the enhanced assignment workflow. So for those of you who are already using assignments 2, enhanced assignments, whatever you want to call them, the ability to really support those additional submission requirements. So from a teacher side, you've always been able to see each of the different submissions that a learner has made to any given assignment, if there are multiple submissions allowed. But on the student side, it was only ever showing the most recent one. So being able to see as a student all of those different submissions, the rubric that you were marked at the time that you submitted that, and any feedback, and being able to see that iteration and that growth as you've progressed throughout that assignment. So that is a really key thing that we've been able to, I think, break down, and for that feedback to be much more prominent in that loop through that new way of showcasing assignments. It also really takes away the confusion that we've seen previously, where students go to their marks area to find their feedback about an assignment, and then they go to assignments to actually upload the assignment. Bringing that together in the one interface has really improved that workflow as well. And the second one I thought I would call out here, there's a lot on that list which is sensational, but the other one I wanted to call out are the updates being made to discussions, or the redesign of discussions to be more intuitive, but without feeling foreign, like people don't actually know or recognize discussions in Canvas anymore. So just some simple changes like sorting replies and making the most recent or unread posts at the top, some of those navigation items, as well as mentioning individuals so that we can draw their attention to a particular reply. But these are just a couple of things, and there's certainly a lot more that's going to be coming in 2022 on the discussions realm, particularly around checkpoints, moderation, some functionality like that. So watch this space when it comes to discussions. And the third pillar there, the vision that Canvas should inspire innovators. And sometimes when we talk to customers, they think, oh, this isn't relevant to me. It's only relevant to our really high level technologists or people that love to play around with the API. And that's definitely not the case. We really want to make sure that this is applicable to enabling all schools, departments, programs, to increase blended teaching and to really rethink what teaching and learning looks like in the world that we're in now, particularly since the pandemic. So they're the three key areas and some examples of those things that have happened across the last year or year and a half. And hopefully if there's anything on that list that you haven't seen previously, would love for you to be inspired to jump in and check out some of those new functionalities and maybe bring those back to your schools and think about how you can leverage those today. I also wanted to quickly share our company vision. So the Instructure company vision, which some of you might have seen, but I suspect that there's plenty of people on the call today who haven't seen this before. And so I really wanted to call this out so that you're aware of the thing that we're thinking about when we develop or build anything. It really comes back to this company vision, which is anchored in three key components. The first of which is calling out that student outcomes are crucial and making student success everybody's objective. The second of which, empowering and amplifying the impact that teaching has on learning. And finally, learning collaboratively. So these are the three things that we are thinking about whenever we're developing product. And when we move forward on the next slide, we're going to have a look at some of the key initiatives that we're focusing our efforts on in 2022 and beyond. Alrighty, so there's a few things on here that might spark your interest, some possibly more than others, but I'm just going to very quickly run through a little bit of background and some of our thinking around each of the items on here. So first of all, instructor interactions or teacher interactions, whatever you'd like to say. For those of you who've been at Instructure and been customers for quite some time, you will know that we have always had an end user, a student first approach when it comes to building our technology. And we've actually flipped that a little bit in 2022 based on the pandemic and the very, very difficult job that teachers have had in the last couple of years. Our Canvas team is calling 2022 the year of the teacher. So all of our thinking will be about the year of the teacher, which is very exciting, seeing some nodding heads, which is fantastic. But essentially really focusing on empowering, enabling, and the benefit of those teachers in what they need to do day to day, trying not to overcomplicate it, trying to save you time where possible. We really don't feel that it's our job to be between the student and the teacher, but to sit underneath and really nurture that interaction. And that's what our focus is in 2022. So in speaking to customers and educators all around the globe since the pandemic, one of the things we've heard most consistently is that student experiences in Canvas, particularly I suppose in high school, less so than primary, but a little bit from both, is that the thing that they struggle most with is when they go into different subjects and they look different, or the way that the teacher is leveraging Canvas is different. And sometimes that can come up with the most diversity or that's the disjoint that they're seeing when they're experiencing Canvas. And so what we're looking to do is to simplify those workflows for teachers when they're building courses. And you might have seen snippets of that when we introduced course templating last year. But we're wanting to continue on this train where we think that that fundamental experience should be about the teaching in the classroom and not about being designers. So really simplifying that layout and making sure that the way that you're designing your courses and the options you have are streamlined to the things that really make the most sense. It doesn't mean we're going to remove personality or complexity or the requirements that you want within your courses, but just making things a little bit more streamlined in how we're thinking about course creation, course design, and course interaction. when we talk about peer review, we're thinking about, obviously the pandemic again has made us think a little bit more about teaching at scale, but certainly in the K-12 area, being able to enable peer feedback to make sure that individuals can critically assess each other, because we know how valuable and the significant value that we've seen that comes from peer-to-peer feedback as opposed to just student-to-teacher feedback. So thinking about, or rethinking, there are some functionalities in Canvas that exist today for peer review, but rethinking a little bit about how we can make that more functional and to better meet the needs from some of the feedback we're receiving, particularly from our region, for how customers would love to see peer review working. Similarly, but not quite the same, we're also looking at self-assessment. So looking to allow critical self-reflection. And this is something we hear more and more from K-12s in our region, wanting to really build into that into courses, a way for learners to be able to think about their learning, their progress, the things that are challenging them, the gaps that they have potentially that they'd like to work on, and making sure that that there's a way for them to sort of review and continue coming back to that growth journey as part of their learning. So that's a big part of what we're thinking about. And this is something where there was a mention from Andy about new quizzes and what's happening with the survey functionality from classic quizzes. Is that going to be included? So the answer, I can't tell you today exactly what it's going to look like, because the product team are really trying to take the time to think about the most appropriate way to build in the types of functionalities that our customers are asking for. When we've spoken to lots of people about the idea of moving to new quizzes and not having that survey functionality, we've had so much feedback from people about, no, don't take it away. We really need it for X, Y, and Z, or we've been using that for this thing over here and for this thing over there. And a lot of the times it's really not like an authentic survey tool that what people are actually looking for. So in some ways it's quizzing without points or without grades, and new quizzes can do that. But there are other things that we think actually might better suit things like a self-assessment tool. So maybe it becomes a part of assignments. Maybe it's something we continue to think about in new quizzes, but it is something we're not wanting to drop and say we're definitely not going to do it in any capacity. We are looking at the best way to meet those needs moving forward. Sorry, that's my dog. Just dropped a dumbbell on the floor. Very good. When we think about group improvements, that's right, even in structure, people are impacted by working from home 24/7. Groups improvements, I know that some K-12 institutions leverage groups heavily and some don't use them at all. So this might be more applicable for some of you than others. But I guess what I wanted to say here is we are really rethinking groups, both from an administrative capability. So from a standpoint of how we create groups and the options that are available there, for example, creating groups based on sections, which you can't do today, as well as thinking about how we're actually deploying those and the functionality that exists within groups, and things like group peer review. So having a bit of intersection between peer review and groups, and how we can continue to improve a number of those elements within courses. Another thing that's on there, which some of you might not have heard of or seen before, is a functionality called pace plans or course pacing. There are a couple of different terms that you might have heard about it from the community if you've seen this one. But essentially, this is something that has been most relevant in open enrollment use cases previously, but there are other instances of this as well. Where essentially someone needs to go in and actually craft differentiated due dates for all the different sections or individuals that are within a course. So not necessarily applicable for our 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, K-12 subjects, but there might be situations where you are wanting to do this, teacher PD, for example, and essentially this type of functionality would take care of that administration so that you can set up a pathway or a template for what that looks like. So if somebody starts a course on day 1, then they will have their first assignment due in 5 days, their second assignment due 12 days after that, and then a discussion or whatever it is. So if someone starts in January or someone starts in the middle of February, they will have the exact same sort of learning pathway crafted for them automatically. So that's a lot of new functionality or things that we're looking to bring into the system, but also really cognizant of the things that we're needing to continue to deliver on and provide value on for our customers. Things like Canvas Data 2, which you might have heard about for some time, and making sure that we're working hard on delivering that for our customers. particularly the requirements for that low latency, high fidelity data and that big data. Andy made mention of it in terms of some of the use cases that you're leveraging it in terms of outcomes, but there's lots of things that we're hearing from K-12s and HE institutions about what they'd love to be achieving if they could have access to that data. So we're continuing to work hard on that, as well as new quiz functionality, the new discussion functionality that I mentioned before, as well as outcomes. So interesting that you presented on that as well today, Andy, because we are also enhancing the existing capability of outcomes this year. A couple of key initiatives there are around including content artifacts. So not just being able to tag things like graded discussions or assignments with outcomes, but being able to actually tag content pieces like pages with outcomes as well. And also the way that you assign and manage outcomes, we're completely reviewing that so that you don't necessarily need to just build it into the rubric within the artifact, but you can do that centrally within the outcomes interface of any course, deciding which outcomes are assigned to which assignments, and also thinking about reporting capability and how we can improve that as well. So lots that's happening. And one of the things that I wanted to, I guess, poke a little bit more at today and show you a couple of very early designs for around our e-portfolio capability within Canvas. And I know that student portfolios and that sort of being able to demonstrate a collection of artifacts or a learning journey is of high interest to lots of customers. And that's something we wanted to dive in a little bit on today, because we are aware that the current functionality within Canvas does not meet the needs of some of our users or the majority of our users. So
Ruth, just before you dive into that, there
Yes.
are a couple of questions that
Wonderful.
have popped up in the chat. Andy asked if I'm assuming this is in relation to assignment enhancements, if it's possible to select Studio as a required submission type.
Yes, it is. Yep, Studio is included, and that's one of the things lots of people are loving about it, but also being able to nominate multiple types of submissions. So maybe someone needs to do a video upload, like a studio recording of themselves, and they also need to upload a PDF or something that is their supplementary documentation or a reference list or something like that. You can do that as well.
And
Awesome, thank you.
No worries.
answered straight away. That's exactly what you want. And Jen Walsh also jumped in, I think in relation to self-assessment. So allowing students to access a task rubric to self-assess or reflect on a task.
Yeah, so self-assessment is something that is, again, part of sort of early discovery at the moment in terms of exactly how we want to do this and the best way to meet the needs of our users. At this point, the product team is approaching it from the problem we're looking to solve is that at the moment there isn't a clear way to leverage self-assessment in Canvas. Some people do use assignments, but we feel that there is a better or a more intuitive way to do that. And so I can't speak about exactly what it's going to look like or what the functionality will include, but certainly being able to, self-assess against a given rubric or something like that is certainly part of what is being explored at the moment.
Okay, great.
And Tara has asked, in Speedgrader, will there be a screen recording option for feedback?
Okay. So this is, sorry, just getting my head around what the question was. So at the moment you can record a video or you can record audio to provide feedback. There have been different explorations happen around possibly leveraging Studio or something like that. But again, not every customer has Studio. So screen grabs of feedback to provide to students is absolutely one of the priorities we have from our region here in APAC that I am advocating for at the moment with our Evaluate, they're called, our assignment and Speedgrader product team. And so there isn't any commitment for the roadmap this year to achieve that, but it is something that we are in constant discussion about.
So I think I know which one this one is, Tara. Essentially, we've spoken about this, and they want to be able to capture screenshots and things like that on the screen, if that makes sense. So, if I'm on Canvas, I'm able to record that particular screen and then put it into as feedback.
Yeah, the idea is we've got a lot of, especially anyone with who's playing back a live recording for drama, let's say, or we're looking specifically at images that students have submitted for photography, for example, but lots of other applications, to be able to scroll through and actually just sort of be able to highlight and circle and talk to it as you go through, as opposed to having to take screenshots, or what we tend to do is going into another program and then video recording our screen and then uploading it that way. Having it integrated into a Speedgrader and because we don't have Studio, that's ideally what we would like to see.
Yep, no, completely understand the use case, and that is certainly captured in the conversations we're having at the moment, but no commitment for delivering on something like that this year at this stage.
Cool. I think we might let you dive into the portfolio stuff. I'm just cognizant of the time as well. And I know Rio and I are happy to stick around a little bit longer if everyone else is, because it seems like there's a lot of things that people want to chat about. So we're happy to extend the user group a little bit longer if people are still available. But yeah, it's up to everyone whether you would like to do that or not. Just sound off in the chat if you think you're interested in doing that. But I'll let you keep going on the portfolios, Ruth.
And I think just what I would share there is this isn't the only session that I can jump in on for future user groups. If the feedback comes back that there are particular areas people would like to hear more about, absolutely happy to come in and provide feedback there. But I do work directly with the CSM team as well. So the people that are supporting you day to day, I have a connection with them and continue that open conversation. So if you have questions about product, please feel free to push those things to your CSM as well. So just very quickly, wanted to share with you just some very early designs, and I cannot stress enough that these are early designs for a re-evaluation or a redesign, a facelift, whatever you want to call it, for the ePortfolio functionality that exists in Canvas today. And so essentially the key things we're trying to achieve here are moving away from the quite clunky and challenging sort of user experience of the interface that exists with Canvas ePortfolios as they stand today, being able to really lay out profile and the different artifacts that you're wanting to pull into your portfolio as a learner at any given stage, and also segregating those into various projects that you may wish to create. So not just having one singular option, but you may wish to have different portfolios for different project requirements and things like that. So you can see here, this is an example of a portfolio with a couple of different artifacts that have been brought in from what they've been doing in their Canvas courses. So a really slick integration, being able to pick and choose, as you can see through this screenshot, from the list of assignments that you have been completing in your Canvas courses to then be able to demonstrate and showcase in your portfolio. So that sort of selection or nomination, again, this might look slightly different in the end product, but this is the type of functionality that is being explored at the moment. Also the way that that links or artifacts would be able to be shared, whether that's public or private, some of those different sharing mechanisms through links, as you can see here. And then from an administration perspective, being able to have that central way of seeing everybody's ePortfolios in your instance, decide who else could be an administrator and managing those permissions here within the interface, and also seeing who's created the portfolios and whether they're visible publicly or privately. So this is the type of functionality that we're looking at the moment. There are additional capabilities that we're exploring as well, but the core of what we're looking to do is really elevate what's available today from a portfolio standpoint. The other thing I wanted to dive into very quickly, if I do have a moment, is just around the Gradebook filtering that was released just last month. So this is currently sitting as a feature preview. So this isn't something that is in there by default. You do need to enable this as a feature option in your account to be able to dive in. But we do have a community user group for this. So anybody who does start leveraging this, please provide feedback. Our product team's ears are wide open and really wanting to hear from everybody around how we can continue to improve this to meet your needs. But essentially, once this has been switched on, in the Gradebook, you then are seeing a more simplified navigation in terms of the drop-down menus that usually exist in the top left-hand corner around view to be able to toggle on or off different filters for only limiting the Gradebook results to particular modules or sections or groups. And instead of doing it that way, you can see it's all centralized through a filter option on the right-hand side, where you are then able to apply similar functionality to what you had before. So you can go ahead and just filter the information based on some of the different conditions that exist today, but also some additional ones that have been introduced, like submissions. So only filtering based on submissions or assignments that have submissions or have ungraded submissions, or based on date. So when the submissions have been received after or before. So there's, again, lots more information about this in the community, but I just wanted to provide a quick preview in case people hadn't had the time to check it out as yet. But the benefit of this is being able to come up with a custom filter that makes sense for you for what you need to be grading at a particular time, that might be quite different to what someone else needs to use, and being able to apply that so that when you're looking at the information in the gradebook, you know that it's a custom filter for exactly the purpose that you're needing to use for any given session of marking. I think I'll stop there. I'm just cognizant of time, and I know that there's other things people want to jump in and chat about, but I hope that's been helpful for you. And if there are any other questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. I will definitely continue answering those now that I've stopped sharing screen. But yeah, again, just thank you so much for having me, and really looking forward to attending future sessions.
Thanks, Ruth. Yeah, there are a couple of questions. Yeah, it looks like we'll go a little bit longer. There are some people can stick around and some people will have to shoot off, and we totally understand. Yeah, we don't want to keep you when you need to shoot off. Does anyone have any questions? I suppose, Ruth, now that you can see the chat, there might be a couple of things that there's a couple of things on e-portfolios that you might be able to help out with.
So just looking at Warwick's question, do you want to just elaborate on that, or just share what you're trying to understand there?
I guess we've had lots of discussions about digital portfolios, and I guess Portfolium was put forward as an alternate product compared to the baked-in version, and kind of suggested we should go into that space rather than looking at the internal Canvas product. But now that that's being reignited, it sounds like it's getting a refresh. And where does that relationship between Portfolium sit compared to the baked-in product?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. That's what I thought you were trying to say, but I just wanted to clarify from your end. So essentially, you're spot on. We did acquire Portfolium a couple of years ago, and it certainly has been the key part of our product suite looking at student portfolios. There was certainly always an intention to some degree to enhance the existing e-portfolio capability within Canvas. And seeing the portfolio capability that existed within Portfolium, the free folios version of Portfolium, was something that there's been lots of feedback from customers who have tried that globally about elements of that they really do like, and things about the existing e-portfolio tool that they really like as well. They would just like to see modernized or improved. So what we're doing is we're actually taking elements of the free folio component of Portfolium and building that into to a brand new interface within Canvas that obviously can be accessible and can perform at a really high standard across the scope and load of every single user across the globe using Canvas, which is no small number. So wanting to make sure that that's essentially what the new relationship would be, that the free folio component or components of that are being brought into the native Canvas LMS experience. In terms of the other offerings that Portfolium has, like pathways and badging support and things like that, those things will continue to be that sort of elevated, that next level, and that will continue to be at a cost, as opposed to the free folios, which for about a year now, customers have been able to opt in to swapping out the e-portfolios in Canvas for the free folios, but it's just really been a link to take them to that site from within the Canvas LMS, as opposed to actually being an integrated and embedded solution that respects and understands the different artifacts being completed in various course enrollments. So hopefully that explains the two different sort of areas there.
Thanks.
No worries.
So the other thing, I think it was Phil and Jeff as well, and talked about, I suppose in reference to e-portfolios as well, as any sort of portfolio type of functionality similar to how Seesaw does things for a younger audience.
Yeah, it's certainly been part of the conversations. And as I said, this is something that's in active development right now. So it's by no means a finalized product. But certainly our sort of most important component to release is a really functional e-portfolio that is a significant improvement on what is available today in Canvas. But there is absolutely openness within the product team to consider what that might look like for suitability for our youngest learners, and that Seesaw. We don't want to say, yeah, it's going to be just like Seesaw in Canvas, but that there will be certainly exploration done around how we can meet the needs of those sort of primary users as well.
That would be an important issue for us as well. We've actually gone to the trouble of purchasing Seesaw K-6 for digital portfolios, even though we're using Canvas from year 3 onwards. So we're only using it as the digital portfolio component. And if there was a way of using the native digital portfolio to the younger students, that would be beneficial to us.
Yeah, and that's definitely feedback we've heard from a couple of different customers, particularly here in APAC. So you're certainly talking about something that has been raised, which is fantastic. It's good to hear the different use cases people have. I think it would be really interesting to understand exactly, because there are some nuances customer to customer or school to school about exactly what's most important to them that Seesaw offers that you would love to see in Canvas natively. So that's a sort of conversation that we can continue to have via CSM as well.
If there are no more questions for Ruth, we did have one last point to have a chat about managing, just an open discussion on how people are managing student absences and maybe teacher absences as well. So feel free to jump off mute, turn on your video, and yeah, start the conversation. If anyone wants to share what they're currently doing, how they're handling student absences, particularly all of us dealing with COVID at the moment.
Yeah, so I guess with so many different strains that schools have had with accessing casuals, there's a lot more internal staff that are taking other people's classes. So some of our schools have actually reverted to creating a sub-account role called casual, whereby teachers in that particular role can access and view other people's courses without actually breaking anything. Yeah, so I thought that was pretty clever by some of our schools to be able to think on their feet. And my only other one would be the schools that have engaged in whole cohort designs where classes form sections within a course. They're finding that to be a superior design at a time where not all the teachers are in the at the school at the same time. So that's 2 from Para.
Yeah, I agree with you, David. We moved a while ago to whole cohort classes, and that has actually been quite helpful in these times where staff are dropping in and out, and a teacher needs to just have access to a class quite easily. We've kind of got that sort of in our back pocket by that design, as opposed to how the blueprints and sort of individual associate courses work.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We've actually seen schools in pre-pandemic create similar roles to what you're talking about as well, Dave, where for other purposes. So quite often for peers to be able to share what they're doing in their courses, or for people to just go and see what other classes are doing in their Canvas courses. They create almost like a read-only admin role to give people access to jump in and just view stuff so that they can get inspiration, and also to see, if someone is doing something really well, they can actually see how they're doing it. So not every school is comfortable with doing that, but there can be lots of good reasons for doing that kind of thing as well.
I had one.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. No, go Tracy. I've been a meeting hog, so you go.
Oh, no, that's okay. Just adding that we have a lot of teachers' aides in learning support roles, and so we created an admin access sort of read only at a student kind of view. And once they can recall the course code, they can have virtually complete access to all our student courses that way. It's just meant that rather than having those teachers' aides with a dashboard full of courses that are useless most of the time, that they can just pick into an admin role and have a view when needed. It's been really good.
Nice.
I guess that could apply to casuals as well.
Well, one thing I was going to ask is if anyone is using the public course index and just making all of their courses available there. We haven't done that yet. And I'm assuming that by having a course public, it doesn't allow anyone to go in and have edit rights. I don't know if I've checked that out yet, but that was one thing we were tossing up, whether we just include all of the courses in that index and then give staff just a document showing them where to go to search for a course. So if they need to jump in and see another course, they know where to find it. So I don't know if anyone's done that or can stop us before we do that if they think it's a bad idea.
one thing to consider is just being mindful. Some people put staff PD courses and stuff like that, which you don't want students finding. So just be very mindful about what courses you do add to the public course index if you're going to use it.
Okay.
Yep.
But it doesn't, so it wouldn't let teachers, so if you just get access from that side, you don't have any edit rights or anything like that?
No, normally it's so that you can sign up for the course or just
right.
know that it exists and stuff like that. But and they're like staff PD courses are usually self-sign up, self-enrollment type courses. Well, not usually, sometimes self-enrollment courses. So it's just being mindful of those couple of different variables.
Nice, thanks.
I have a two-pronged approach. So I have a Canvas casual, which has got a tile on Canvas. So when we have our casuals come on, they can go on and then they can just search the course. But at the start of every year, I export all the email addresses from Edval and just throw them into a staff role that we have, which gives them the same access, so they can scan any course that they need to. That's the way we do it. Been doing that for years.
Awesome. Okay.
A no-brainer. Oh, sorry, Paul.
Oh no, go Jeff.
Just having stuff on Canvas is an absolute no-brainer, so that it's always there. Teachers always know that it's there. So whether there are teachers in the room or not, this works.
Yep. Now we have gone over a little bit, but we should probably look at finishing up. One thing I will mention before we do is we've created a Padlet board for all those who have responded on the survey, just on some of the themes that we're kind of seeing with the responses that we've put there. And when we send out the follow-up to this meeting with the recording and everything, we'll send out a link to that Padlet board for people to be able to vote on what they think is a priority. And essentially, we'll give you 5 votes on the board. Please don't abuse. And that will help to inform us, those things that are really important, particularly for Ruth in her role, those things that are important to us from our region. Rio, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no. So we'll come up, we'll regroup and have a look through all of the ideas or problems that you're trying to solve there, well, like the 5 was just an arbitrary number that we came up before the meeting, so we might have to expand that a little because there's so many there that we might have to give you 10 or something like that, so that we have a clear winner on who's voting for what and what comes up to the top. Because if we don't give you enough choices, it might be everyone's on the same number of points or something like that. So we'll figure that out. We'll kind of send an email out after this, and then we'll send you the instructions so that we can go ahead and collate that information so that we can feed it back to Ruth and her team.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming today. Appreciate it. And we will have another one next term, another user group. So there's a lot that I think we can keep talking about indefinitely, I think. So thanks again, and we'll catch up again soon.